Hello, viewers. I want to thank you very much for the privilege of being able to share this pre-conference slideshow with you. These are really very sensitive times we live in, and it's become necessary to be able to assure that we're able to truly have a frame of reference around which to address sensitive and important issues when they arise. It's really against that backdrop that we did decide to create an organization that essentially would enable us better reposition as a nation across the globe. This explains the theme of our conference today, Towards a Jailbreak. My name is Patrick Akinbola, and I'm privileged to be president of this organization at this particular moment, co-convener as well. I'm looking forward to indeed being able to utilize this pre-conference slideshow to establish a frame of reference, a scaffolding, if you will, of the very just to be able to provide a proper context for a lot of the complexities that surround the Nigerian experience overall, and why some of us have come to the conclusion that nothing short of a complete dissolution of the country would provide its citizens with the lease of life that they really need. The need to do this became even more significant following our inability to be able to directly connect with you at the conference, which was scheduled for Wednesday, the 24th of September, coinciding with the day the Palestinians got their own independence. I mention this because we had extensively tried to invite people to the conference, and we found out that there were some people who went out of their way to assure that the conference did not hold. This essentially is the reason why this pre-conference slideshow has become even more important, because it's obvious that there are very sensitive things that some people will probably prefer that the world didn't hear about. And so I'd just like you to indulge me in enabling me to very effectively try to take you through a set of slides, essentially to provide you with that frame of reference around which you can begin to understand the complexities associated with trying to forge a political solution within that Nigerian space as it's currently constituted. Without much ado, let me just go ahead here to begin to share these slides. The experience of the members of the Odua nation overall has been one which obviously shows a multi-generational loss of identity. And to say that we are having to engage on this both as a multi-generational assignment as well as a global one would not be an overstatement. And I mention this just to again appreciate the fact that we as a people are much more endowed than to end up in the kind of situation we currently have in Nigeria, which is part of what has informed some of us across the globe to say, never again for future generations. We are a truly rich, truly blessed, original people. And there is more than enough evidence that we don't have to be in the kind of miserable situation that we are in at this time. And I mention this because there's a whole lot for us to be proud of. The sage, Pa Awolowo, happens to have already blazed a trail for our people, giving us enough footprints around which for us to appear unsure of what the future holds would really be to renege on all that he had positioned us to be able to do. Uh, most of you will be familiar with some of these images. These are the most naturalistic of African works of art. And most of these are 9th to 12th century or a little bit later, which shows highly sophisticated technology that we were using even before the so-called civilized cultures of the West became familiar with them. I mention this because this was actually an accidental find. It was an accidental discovery around 1938, thereabout, buried somewhere in the western part of Nigeria, which is where we hail from, and which is our indigenous land. Now, this accidental find of such precious items itself is illustrative of a calculated attempt to be able to diminish us and prevent us from being able to celebrate what really is who we are. And so it was necessary to bring that back into focus. I do have here also a handbook, a blueprint that had already been established, which somehow among us, a conscious decision was made to assure it did not find the light of day. Uh, we'll be returning to this in the coming months. But suffice it to say that we have more than enough in intellectual assets and otherwise around which to be sure that freedom for us is not whether, it's really a certainty, and it's just a question of how soon we'll be able to get to that point. The situation in Nigeria is hydra-headed, complex, and brings with it so much that it becomes really very difficult to try to discuss it all without really being able to assure that some very fundamental aspects of it are well understood. This slide, for instance, shows some of the types of stressors that would automatically now weigh on the southwest part of the country, which is where Yorubas are located. I make this point because when you look at the security inadequacies in the country today, you can understand why a lot of that are really tied to the disparities that exist within the land, both amongst the people and all of the other demographic factors associated. The truth of the matter is that Nigeria is truly at a crossroads at this particular moment, and a lot of what is going on is tied to the indigenous nations who are the original owners of the land haven't been displaced. So we now have a dichotomy between the actual owners of the land who have little or no power, and globalists and colonial settlers who run the entire show. At least 60% of the earnings of Nigeria today are actually earned by outsiders, people that don't belong in Nigeria. And so that's a good baseline information around which to begin to understand the implications of having this large diversity of ethnic nations who have somehow been subsumed under an atmosphere where they have really little to say for themselves. I am of the view that self-determination is truly a life and death matter, and on the surface of it, that might appear like a slogan, but when we come to look at some of the longer implications of some of what can occur where a people are not able to effectively organize themselves, it becomes obvious that the consequences can be very grave. I very often make the draw the analogy of the blind man trying to identify an elephant based on the part they are feeling, to illustrate some of the complexities of the Nigerian situation. And some of these AI generated images really illustrate as graphically as possible some of the things that comes to mind when we begin to look at the variety of the issues and interests that all intersect to make the place the smorgasbord of violence and corruption that it has now become. Uh, Suffice it to say that the issue of security continues to uh, continues to escalate and creates a major tension point relative to where we are and what's going on. And as you can see here, an environment where the whole place really has little or no policing within the context of a modern society what this does is to indeed increase the escalation in political tensions across the space. I'd like to mention at this time, some of the fallout from the divisions within the polity itself. This young, brilliant uh, uh, combat helicopter pilot was actually assassinated. She didn't just die, and she happened to have been very effective with being able to tackle Boko Haram as a combat helicopter pilot, and was specifically targeted for elimination. And as a result of this, she was actually killed in some kind of motor accident, they say, within a military base. No one was ever really prosecuted for whatever happened. And suffice it to say that it was evident that this was a deliberate takedown. Some of us will probably recall this bishop who was at the Capitol Hill testifying within some committee not too long ago. Suffice it to say that the issue of the genocide that's been unleashed across Nigeria today has already become common knowledge, and at the heart of it is really the fact that the land is of interest to some. Islamic zealots and people with a Sharia agenda, for instance, have already concluded that they have to take all of the land, and in an environment where those supposed to essentially protect the political position and stature of those in this part of the country, already essentially sold out, both to the globalists and colonial settlers. And so, what we have against that backdrop is a full betrayal of the people by the elite class, and this has obviously increased the tensions. I need not mention, tied to the tensions that we currently have, the fact that additional lands provided based on new territories ceded with the extended continental shelf makes a lot of our elites already has them drooling with their foreign globalist partners at the prospect of hijacking the people's wealth. This is a very significant issue because there are a whole lot of attendant implications, and the lack of transparency associated with the entire process, and even up till now, the fact that it is foreign interests that have essentially seen this as their own treasure trove of resources for exploitation rather than the people who own the land. That on its own does raise fresh questions, underscoring for us the importance to be very vigilant at a time like this towards assuring that Yoruba, the children of Odua, are able to assert their rights to their ancestral land and assure that their positioning is completely redefined compared with what it is today. I did mention colonial settlers and I mentioned colonial settlers, globalists, and their foreign partners, and the way they have essentially disproportionately displaced the ethnic nations of Nigeria. This is really at the heart of our interest in assuring a more global institutional approach to addressing our issues. The images you have here, for instance, very graphically represent those that constitute the two pillars that hold the Nigerian economy together right now in terms of wealth and influence. And this is very significant because neither of them is a Nigerian in indigenship, and what you have is a situation where, in collusion with their criminal partners, they've ended up essentially usurping a people's franchise with the active collusion of their Western partners. And of course, as you can imagine, the globalists who would rather see us on the menu rather than at the table. Now, this is a very significant point to make because I did mention to you already the fact that the vast amount of Nigeria's wealth is not going to Nigerians. And so, suffice it to say that these are the types of issues that have only further informed our desire to be able to assure that our people across the globe can get a new lease on life as a result of being recognized for who they are and the fact that they truly own the land and the assets associated with it. I'd like to shift gears a little bit here now and move on to talking about food security and the sovereignty and autonomy of our people. The fact that a document such as this could be shared in the public space and all of the institutions that are supposed to represent human rights and environmental interests, especially for the vulnerable population, essentially see it and pretend that they couldn't understand the longer implications of a GMO agenda across the nations of Africa, in collusion with Bill Gates and the rest of the global big pharma conspiracy and so on. It's significant. And for someone like myself who has been following this issue since the 80s, it does indeed underscore for me the reason why there's no place outside engaging issues like this for me as an educated person. You do see the optics, even just the mere optics of having institutions in such incestual relationship with regulatory organizations and governments, showing very, very clearly what 21st century slavery looks like and its manifestations. I feel very personally aggrieved and insulted to see that things like this can be going on at a time such as this, despite all of the very, very bright minds and all of the intellectual assets that our people have accumulated across the globe, and the fact that the implications of these types of associations only point to tragedy in the end. It's very important to be able to connect some of the dots also with regards to some of those that actually wield disproportionate power in Nigeria itself, who have also been beneficiaries of state capture. And so this is one of the reasons why this slide itself is very informative, because it begins to enable us to begin to connect some of the dots with regards to what exactly is going on and who indeed, by following the money, we have a better sense of what exactly is happening and what the long-term implications are. I mentioned all of this just to be able to underscore for you how GMO on its own is really a much more organized genocide against our people, which began in South Africa about 2 decades ago, moving on to Kenya almost a decade ago, and now is being activated in Nigeria. Permit me to shift gears by talking briefly about this young pretty lady who was lynched a couple of years ago in the heart of Sokoto by her fellow students, upset at a remark she had made. And all up till today, no one was brought to book. And suffice it to say that even those that were supposed to have been rising to the occasion and addressing it with all of the necessary impact, essentially did fail in their duties. I'd like to also just kind of on a general, and I'm going to move this slide presentation a little bit faster to make the point that describing Nigeria really as a crime scene is it's a reputation it earned through a whole lot of different activities which have essentially signaled an effort to force some ethnicities to stay under the control of others. And what that has involved has been a lot of back deals and other types of manipulations, whereby the larger majority of the population had little, very, very little say in their own lives. Let me change now and talk a little bit about corruption and how the institution of corruption and state capture has already become a major one in Nigeria. And I want to mention for special worthy note here, son of Odua Land, our multi-billionaire here, uh, 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 Mr. Ogunlesi with BlackRock at this time, who has blazed trails as a successful international businessman and industrialist. I mentioned him and what we have in the public space as his declared asset worth to be able to provide you a better context of what the implications of state capture has been in Nigeria and why pretending as if that amount of uh, uh, state capture doesn't have significant implications in the long term on the recovery of the people that were either victimized or exploited as a result of it would be ignoring the obvious. This is the reason why it was very important for me to be able to assure that you're able to see what he has to show. And then I'm now going to run through some other slides, which is essentially showing you what state capture in Nigeria means to be able to enable you really begin to understand why not holding these ones responsible, not holding the international community itself responsible, because it was obviously the active connivance of international institutions that enabled this type of looting, collective looting over decades to occur, where a handful of people have this amount of wealth all in their hands and the rest of the people can hardly afford a meal a day. President Trump had published a list of 25 thieves, as we have labeled them. And what is significant is that these are actually the people who constitute the elite in the country. And these are also people who have directly benefited from their positions in office when they should have been the ones trying to protect the interests of those that elected them. This is what makes this a significant issue to bring up in this pre-conference slideshow, because it's like an elephant in the room that we're hoping is going to go away, and somehow we don't see going away. It's really very important to be able to get a better sense of what it really means when a country such as Nigeria has a handful of people, and this is the type of wealth that they have all available to them. And what we have right now is a calculated attempt by them to actually prevent being able to have the indigenous nations have their freedom for obvious reasons. Another very significant point I'd like to make at this point is the fact that there is also a demonic dimension tied to this whole process of keeping a large number of people under control. Whether you want to believe it or not, the truth of the matter is that there's quite a lot that's going on, which shows that many people are being unwittingly teleguided in directions that they may not be fully aware of. And this becomes a very important variable around which to really begin to better appreciate why it's important for us to get our freedom. I want to mention here also some of the relationships that you would obviously identify as strange bedfellows, which indeed again underscores the environment we live in right now in Nigeria, which has really become very anti-intellectual and anti-progressive. And so what that has meant has been looking for people with a reputation or credibility and attempting to utilize their photo ops and so on towards essentially misrepresenting things, something that is not would not be the typical thing. I'd also like to mention the fact that foreign interest in our matters has obviously complicated a whole lot of things, especially when we then find that between the elite and the foreigners, there's even more connivance towards undermining the ordinary people that form the larger population of the nation. I throw all of that in because these are all very significant. Here, for instance, is a slide show which is essentially showing someone that is a Boko Haram Fulani, man of Fulani ancestry, who happens to be a governor of a state in the north, And his own idea is that any Fulani from anywhere across the continent can come to Nigeria and there's no formality about accommodating them as a member of the country, which shows a completely different understanding amongst people of the same country. So when you then have a situation where unwittingly or indeed some of our politicians are now getting into situations where our assets are again being intermingled with assets of Boko Haram sympathizers, and there's no transparency in what's going on. You begin to recognize the different kinds of very, very unholy alliances that are going on at the expense of the people. The whole issue with regards to Samoa and the LGBT deal is another very significant one that shows the elite of our land having secretly, essentially sold out very, very vital concessions involving the values of our people. And even as we speak, the whole issue is still shrouded in a whole lot of misery. Again, underscoring the fact that we essentially have not been able to assert ourselves as true citizens of the land all our lives. And suffice it to say that there's a whole lot of history that demonstrates that. The title of this book by one of our foremost journalists and very experienced bureaucrat says it all with regards to what it is that really constitutes Nigeria and why it is that it's never worked. This book is about 1,500 pages, and what it does is really detail out a lot of the nitty gritty with regards to things that happen in Nigeria that other parts of the world may indeed find very hard to believe. I'd like to, and as I begin to gradually move this presentation to a closing point, I'd like to be able to mention at this point the fact that it's very important to be able to see the disparities in Nigeria as an unbelievable crime on such a large population. The image on the left side of your screen shows you the earnings of most Nigerians. So again, right there you can see unbelievable poverty that can only be a keg of gunpowder that's going to explode sooner or later. The slide on the right side shows you the differences in the values of the people who occupy the same space. A lot of the Muslims in our country, in Nigeria, have a different interpretation of their religion and how it is practiced. And what that does then is to create a difference in the value systems across the land. Another factor that does make the idea of identifying ourselves as indigenous nations and our different values as a very significant factor to influence our interest and desire for self-determination. Of course, the economy is supposed to be the thing that puts it all together. But first and foremost is really the political atmosphere around which such an economy operates. And so this image here is essentially to highlight how the economic situation even further exacerbates the tensions, while at the end of the day, the true solution will still ultimately require uh, uh, some political pathway. Permit me at this point to switch gears by just kind of talking a little bit about myself and some of my previous involvement with this type of matters and why it's very difficult for me to, at this point, ignore them. Uh, this was about 3 decades ago exactly when I had to respond to the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa at the time, and suffice it to say that that began a journey for me, which has essentially made this unfinished business. The Ogoni land is still as polluted as it was, and it still remains polluted, poor, And with all of the outrage of neglect, even as Nigeria is supposed to be a democratic country, I'd like to be able to assure that my own children are not saddled with this same responsibility. As my brother here, Dr. Kabob says, Africa is not poor. And the truth of the matter is that there are a whole lot of us across the continent who, as Pan-Africanists, who are looking forward to a new model around which to address the issues of our disempowerment, which is the reason why I definitely would be looking forward to being able to build up on whatever it is that are initiatives that are going on at this time, led by the progressive AES states. I'd like to mention just briefly this National Summit on Africa, which I was privileged to have been a part of as a delegate from Missouri at the time. This was a great opportunity where an unprecedented gathering of Africans actually came together. I say Africans, it was actually a, a combination of both Africans from the motherland in the diaspora, as well as professionals from other fields, related fields, all with a view of being able to develop some very viable, potent plan to increase Africa's integration with its African American ancestry uh, placed here in the US. Suffice it to say that this document ended up stillborn, never really found the light of day for obvious reasons. And at this point in time, whatever it is that we are doing towards being able to regenerate that African Renaissance could benefit from picking up from initiatives such as this. I'd like to mention this as I begin to close here as one of my earlier works. This was at the National Museum almost 3 decades ago. Also, when I had the privilege of working as a museum education officer, but as an artist at the time and a Pan-Africanist, I obviously had very clear ideas about what it is that could come out of the continent. And it is these types of motivation that has kept me despite all that has gone on. Despite all of the setbacks that we've had as a race, as a people. I want to thank everyone that's been part of this slide presentation. The idea wasn't to give you all that you needed to know about Nigeria. It was really merely to be able to highlight a few things that would then help in guiding discussions, or indeed being able to expose more people to the complexities associated with trying to address issues in such a multi-ethnic society. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have further interactions with anyone that may want to follow up on this, and we will definitely continue to keep you abreast of our progress. Thank you very much.
So now we'll be introducing our president to give the inaugural speech. Our president is Dr. Patrick Akinbola, as we can see him online. He's a man of many parts. He's an artist. He has done so many NGOs and director, and he's an entrepreneur. So now let's invite our president, Dr. Patrick, to give the opening speech. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen of the press, fellow descendants of Oduduwa across the globe, brothers and sisters, wherever it is you are, I am really honored, I'm humbled and delighted to be able to have this opportunity to share with you on a day like this. This is truly a memorable day, a historic one, as we celebrate with the Palestinians after a long, long struggle as an indigenous people. We thank God Almighty that we're able to witness this. And this has further given us hope that our own will not be too long. I will say congratulations again to them. I speak to you today as one who has lived both far from and close to home, as one who has watched our people survive and suffer, and as one who will not be silent while our future is at stake. Anyone that's really familiar with me will probably recognize the fact that I'm a relatively private person, and the decision to take these bold steps did not come on a whim. As a result of that, please indulge me to be able to speak from the heart, to be able to speak with all authenticity, tied to highlighting the importance of this particular undertaking to both my co-convener and myself, as well as all of the other members of our team that have made it possible for us to be able to join you here today. Don't allow the number of people watching at this time to deceive you as to who has heard our message. I can assure you that a lot of people are listening to us and they recognize the genuineness of our struggle. This is an inaugural press conference, and we specifically have labeled it global and themed it pursuing a jailbreak. Those are very serious words with which to relate to a freedom struggle. And I only say this as a precursor to some of the things that I'm going to be highlighting in my very short speech today, following which my co-convener will have the opportunity to be able to further reaffirm some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Please permit me to step back just a little bit. I just mentioned to you, I was highlighting the seriousness of this particular moment and why it took a little while, and some of the issues that we're going to be discussing and using to introduce ourselves are themes that we're going to be highlighting in the course of our future interactions with you. I mentioned the fact that securing a jailbreak is how we describe our freedom struggle from Nigeria. And I was highlighting how that wasn't an easy decision. It did take some sober reflection on our reality and what it really is going to take to be able to draw the world's attention to where we are, which is the reason why I'd like to start today's inaugural press conference by highlighting something that I think is a significant underlying theme around which any future discussions about our dear nation will have to be contextualized. Now, I am referring to the age-old elephant analogy, the four blind persons trying to describe an elephant, and each person describing it based on the part that they are able to feel. The one with the tusk identifies it as such, the one with the leg, similarly, and then the one with the trunk, of course, under a different descriptor. So each insisting with confidence that he alone has the whole. Now, this is a very significant point because when you listen to the general discussion on the Nigerian environment, an environment we now popularly call a crime scene, you will see that at the heart of all of that is the fact that it is really a conglomeration of contradictions, and some people have been able to very, very conveniently feed fat on that. This is very significant because each is insisting with confidence that he alone knows the whole. I'm mentioning this because this isn't just our effort at self-determination for our people. It's more than just a freedom struggle. It is really a recontextualizing of the reality of our people, 60 million strong in Nigeria alone, and the rest of the globe, of course, languishing as we see. Now, I'm mentioning the elephant analogy and the fact that each group is insisting with confidence that he alone knows the whole. So 65 years now since that stroke of midnight, 1960. I was 2 years when independence struck. Now here I am approaching my 70th. So this is 65 years. And our people have been like these blind men. Yes, we have been. And of course, those that have been feeding fat on that scenario have fed fat on it. So I'm mentioning this because we're going to be breaking it down. We're going to be disaggregating it in trying to establish why we have clarity about the need to be able to move our people into the civilized world that we are destined for. So I did mention that people are like those blind men, seeing fragments, arguing over pieces, crumbs, never guided by a full and honest appraisal of the truth. So as you can imagine, we as true Omoluabis recognize the depth of understanding, commitment, and thought that goes into truly emerging as a strong, proud nation. And when we look at where we are now, we see what can happen if the farm is left to the rascals, the losers, and those that don't have the community values that a lot of us share. I'm mentioning this because I'm trying to provide a backdrop as to why Yoruba Global 1000. Where did that come from? Where did that idea come from? The fact that we've been seeing only partial pictures of our dilemma has been costly. The fact that as a people, we haven't been able to consolidate our common relational power to be able to assert them in a global environment as complicated as it is today already shows how the current crop of leaders we have actually failed us. They failed us in its entirety. And they've essentially taken for granted that most of us are just going to play dead and allow them to get away with such crimes. Of course, as Omoluabis, we will not allow that to happen. I needed to be able to emphasize to you what went into having Yoruba Global emerge as a non-profit organization and the positioning of Yoruba Global relative to where we are headed and our commitment to be able to get there. And so this is part of the reason why it was important for me to be able to encapsulate for you some of our own experiences and motivations around which then you can decide whether or not we really have earned your trust enough to be able to support us as to whether or not we really have enough understanding of the issues, among other verification and due diligence that I would expect most that are going to be listening to be able to do in due course. Now, I'm mentioning the fact that because we only see parts, this partial scene being costly, it has allowed powerful outsiders and their proxies to keep us small in our own land. Let me restate that in another way. It has enabled colonial settlers and the foreign imperial powers and all of the other inner enemies amongst our people to be able to constitute enough of a force. And even lately now, we are now finding the demonic aspect of this contraption, which is another variable that obviously for freedom fighting becomes even more relevant. So I am saying that our underdog status in Nigeria today did not occur overnight. And, for people such as myself who have direct experiences tied to the Civil War, who have direct experiences tied to how my own parents served some other Nigerians in a subservient position despite all their credentials, who is already seeing now how this current crop of politicians are positioning the next generation. That's a sobering realization that our freedom struggle will have to be based on a recalibration of our understanding of who we are, where we are, and what it is going to take not to go extinct. Yes. So again, I really didn't want to hurry over the process of explaining to you how we got here, which is why I'm talking about Yoruba Global and the whole underdog status, because when you do get to get the full breakdown, you recognize that my co-convener and myself, among others, really have a lot of institutional memory about this land, and that is institutional memory that we do plan to bring to good use. Now, this type of division and keeping us small has silenced prophetic voices such as Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni Nine. I remember very, very vividly, exactly 3 decades ago, my role in the whole boycott shell initiative after Ken Saro-Wiwa passed on, after he died, was murdered. And his body was dissolved in acid to make sure that nothing will come of it. I recall very vividly the fact that this was something that we got some of us really motivated enough that that's where we started cutting our democratic teeth, if you allow me to use those words. The fact that the same people who killed Saro-Wiwa are still the ones presiding over the affairs of the nation today is very significant. It is also very significant that the Ogoni Niger Delta remains as polluted, if not more polluted. And the oil majors have been trying to wangle their way back to continue the exploitation. So what am I saying? What am I saying? That their deaths in 1995 remains a wound, which has left that as unfinished business for some of us. So this is why Yoruba Global exists. Yoruba Global 1000 is actually a reset. We see it as a reset, not nostalgia, but a practical, moral, generational, and indeed intergenerational and global project. Let me state that again, that the whole idea of a Yoruba Global 1000 as a global organization dedicated to assuring that Yorubas, people with Yoruba ancestry across the globe, are able to, as stakeholders, assure that our people and culture does not perish. That is the underlying theme that motivates us as Yoruba Global 1000. So I did mention that it's not nostalgia. So it's not just some wishy-washy stuff where we are dreaming of some unrealizable things, but it's really a practical, moral, intergenerational, and global assignment. And I use those words very, very well considered, because that is what the co-convener and myself as the leaders actually represent. Our culture, rooted in Omoluabi values of character, courage, and mutual respect, those are the gold standards that make us very, very confident about our journey. If you look at us as Yoruba people, when they describe us as a rich, truly sophisticated culture, that's a very multi-dimensional qualification to try to break down. And this is one of the reasons why the idea of anchoring Yoruba Global around Omoluabi standards was crucial for us in redirecting our people within the context of what we intend to do and by Olodumare's power will do. So I mentioned that those Omoluabi values, most people talk about Omoluabi values very flippantly. Most Yoruba professionals don't even know what those Omoluabi values really constitute. When you begin to look at up to 40 separate indicators of an Omoluabi, then you have a better understanding of why those of us who are intent and confident about the liberation of our people feel so certain. So our rallying cry is simple and concrete for Yoruba Global 1000. We're talking about $1,000 by 1,000 children and descendants of Oduduwa, which is supposed to be a promise, a strategy, a seed fund, a symbol, a commitment, not charity, but investment. Investment in our future as a proud people who have been displaced and recognized that as a global brand, our recovery depends on identifying a few good, truly committed ones among us who are willing to put their money and their moral and other good qualities where their mouth is. Unfortunately, you know, our land is now overflowing with omoalis and opportunists all over the place, whereby the good people essentially are now few and far between in terms of those really willing to stand up for the future of our people. So this is the reason why, some of us decided that something had to occur. And I want to give you a little bit of a background as to how we got here in terms of what have we done. Most of you will probably find that this is the first time I'm appearing on the air on YouTube, or apart from maybe my own personal professional work or family work. And so this is one of the reasons why it was very important for me to assure that there was clarity about what it is that we stand for, and essentially also share some of my own background so people have a better sense of what part of this I can, both Yoruba Global and those of us that represent its values can actually get involved. I happen to have been involved with the Yoruba Global, Yoruba World Congress under Professor Bangiji Akintoye and all of the other people that were pioneering members. And I thank God that that was an occasion that a lot of us, children of Odu across the globe, were truly sensitized to the fact that we had been asleep and there was need to wake up. Now, I was privileged to have been delegated to coordinate the creation of a Yoruba digital library, and of course, as you can imagine, that was the kind of undertaking that required some fair amount of effort towards reaching a lot of our people who may directly or indirectly be involved with some of the intellectual work over the years, around which essentially such a library project was supposed to have been very successful. Now, I mentioned this because this is how I ended up becoming also very more familiar with a lot of the organizers and a lot of people, even though I wasn't, I was always behind the scenes, so to speak. Now, that it was during that process also that the co-convener and myself, Dr. Lawal and myself, met, because she lives in some other state, and it was based on involvement with Yoruba Global and the digital project and some of the other things that we all ended up in this journey where a whole lot has taken place. And I want to, at this time, especially appreciate and commend Professor Banji Akintoye and our fearless leader, Chief Sunday Igboho, Both are people that both the co-convener and myself have a very good relationship with, and I'm assured that our journey for our freedom will ultimately gel into something very cohesive, working together. So I mentioned these because it taught us a lot of things. Even previous to having this conference today, there were a whole lot of things that we were able to also learn with regards to our people and why we are where we are. A common analogy I give when I think about our people, and I'm trying to give an illustration, is that of a people who have 10 shackles placed around their legs, hands, or head, or wherever. And they are able to identify 4 or 5 of those shackles, and they release them. And then they begin to celebrate, thinking they are free. Now, I say this as this is a very considered point of view on my behalf, that I'm making, and I definitely like to be able to engage it even more fully. Because unfortunately, because of our historical record as an oppressed and a conquered people, the multi-generational impact of that has been devastating on us. I look at our children today, for instance, and most of us, despite our credentials and very, very bright professional attainment, we cannot even convince our own children that an independent Oduduwa nation is worth getting involved with. We couldn't recognize at that level what it really means. And most of us will very quickly compare ourselves to the Jewish or any number of other ethnic groups, giving the impression that all it takes is flipping a switch and people can be organized to pursue their freedom. I needed to be able to articulate this very clearly because the lessons that we learned from working with the Yoruba World Congress and all of the different things that continue to still be part of the freedom struggle today is part of the reason why we have come to the realization that most of us are not free. Most of us live on our knees and we don't even recognize it as such. But rather than being condemning of anyone, our attitude is one where we recognize that our freedom has to be planned. And this is one of the reasons why our intention is to be able to be part of those forces for good. I'd like to take a moment now to talk about my co-convener, Dr. Omawumi Lawal. And I needed to do this, and very often I would say that had it not been for her in terms of her own tenacity and focus and the kind of exemplary commitment that she had given to the cause, there was definitely no way that I would have taken on such an undertaking. And I do have to highlight the fact that she embodies those Omoluabi ethos in the fullest extent that you can imagine. Consistent, reliable, courageous, and dedicated. Both of us are retirees. And so we could choose rest, relaxation, holidays. But we choose service. We choose to secure a dignified future for those who follow us. So this is what keeps us active. It is what keeps us busy. It's what keeps us motivated, recognizing that it takes leadership to be able to make anything happen. And if a people are as suppressed, depressed, intimidated, cowed as we are, of course, you can recognize what it is going to take to be able to move us out of that type of rut. So, where are we headed? Where are we headed? What does Yoruba Global 1000 intend to do in being able to assure that our jailbreak is efficacious. It is well positioned. First thing is that we see the issue with regards to colonial settlers and indigenous nations as a major issue that is not going to go away short of a collective initiative where ethnic nations in Nigeria are actually collectively engaging and confronting the colonial settlement and the resource capture and the globalist designs. So this is very important. And we're already working actively with ethnic nations within the context of the fact that ethnic nations own 100% of the land in Nigeria. And so if you then have a situation where 60% of the wealth of Nigeria is going to people who are not even Nigerians whatsoever, and whatever the little bit that is left has essentially been cornered by the colonial settlers. So you recognize why a paradigm change is required, and you recognize also why such a paradigm change might not come until the powers that be, so to speak, come to recognize the displacement of ethnic nations. Someone like myself, for instance, now as a professional who, by God's grace, and indeed my co-convener, similarly, have earned our stripes, both in service back at home as well as abroad. At this point, I left out completely with the thousands of other professional colleagues across the globe, while the opportunities to develop our country are still being handled by foreigners and colonial settlers and other agents of the oppressive forces that essentially are engaged in the second slavery as we now know it. So I'm mentioning that in terms of where we're headed, the first thing is the fact that our pursuance of efforts to free our people is going to be more robust than just approaching it as one ethnic nation. I will leave the details of how all of that is unfolding for now for obvious reasons. The second issue is a future free of GMO agents and imposed systems that undermine our health and autonomy. Let me state that again, that second one. We are saying that an independent Odua nation is going to be GMO free. And that's our own commitment, because as an indigenous nation, as an original nation, as the nation which singularly represents the proliferation of Africans outside of the continent that has survived all of the centuries, we recognize the value of our originality. And this is the reason why our commitment to banning any form of evil GMO activities in our land is not negotiable. You know, there's some of us who have been following the whole GMO pesticide issue as far back as the 80s, even before my children were born, when we were already aware of what Monsanto and all of these folks were doing, and were involved in very actively in environmental groups to pursue it. So when you then look at the trajectory of activities, how many years later, and then you are looking at some of the types of things that some of our own professionals are allowing to occur in collusion with the Bill Gates and so on, and the African Development Bank and so on and so forth. You recognize why GMO itself constitutes a major existential threat to our people. And this is one of the reasons why it is obviously one that is headed for some kind of international platform to be able to really affirm what are the liabilities associated with this, and where there are some very specific criminal predatory activities that top government officials may have been involved in some of the African countries. So this is a very personal thing to me. And one of the reasons why it really grinds me is the fact that there was no form of stakeholder consultation. No form of stakeholder consultation. And these are supposed to be transgenic GMO stuff which had been placed into staple food like soy, things that we eat on a regular basis. And I'm asking myself, what happened to all the bright minds in Yoruba land? Are we saying that we all got so complicit? So I'm still mentioning a second issue. I mentioned the interethnic coalition, which is obviously something that we definitely feel very strongly that the issues that are facing the Yorubas or children of Odua today are very similar to the issue facing the Hausas or the Tiv or a whole bunch of the other people. And it is obvious that some people will prefer that we didn't have to engage based on that new paradigm. So the issue of that interethnic coalition is going to be very important to being able to effectively transition from the crime scene that Nigeria is now to a new dispensation where colonial settlers and all of the inside enemies, the emergency billionaires, and all of the people who did all the abracadabra with the banking. In Nigeria, when they call Nigeria a crime scene, the level of criminality in Nigeria is in a different category completely. And so when you hear us as an organization saying that we are going to be pursuing certain things based on some consideration, it's really based on our understanding of where we are. We will press for clarity around treaties like Samoa, very, very significant treaties that were quietly passed, and a handful of people, money changed hands, huge amounts of money changed hands, and somehow 240 million population Nigerians are just supposed to pretend that there's no problem. So I'm mentioning this because the process of coming to understand why Yorubas, global Omoluabis, are saying we have to go. It's not just based on one set of things, either the Fulanis and their cows or whatever. It is really based on an ecosystem that is consistent with what we have as our own values. And the idea that the distortion of that has already now created a terrible situation that requires global attention is the reason why we are so involved. These agreements being used against our people, talking about the Samoa and the GMO, and of course the World Trade Organization and all of those treaties that are supposed to assure our continued exploitation while the so-called leaders look the other way. So it's all part of a collective basket, and anyone who is really truly, who has a true understanding of the way the world works today will understand why we are not willing to just roll over and play dead. The third thing is the idea that we will be wanting to pursue and engage Yoruba identity as a global brand of excellence, not exclusion, but uplift, entrepreneurship, cultural pride, and responsibility. So we're talking about a renaissance here where we will be able to essentially reposition as the very, very uplifting brand that we are. And that on its own will set up a cascading set of positive developments where people of color across the globe will be able to recognize that, yes, we have truly woken up. So this is the third thing that we have as our focus at this point in time. Lastly, the fourth one is a multi-generational mission. We say multi-generational because when you look at a whole lot of our people today, they are just unbelievably lost. I say lost because they don't even know where they are coming from, where they are going, who they are, what they can be, who are their oppressors, who are their allies, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about a multi-generational and globally positioned mission, what we are saying then is that Yoruba Global is an asset to any person with Yoruba ancestry anywhere across the globe. And we know there are some countries that have them even more compared with others. So the whole point here is just to say that we want to be able to exemplify that those Omoluabi traits in such a way whereby all of our brothers and sisters across the globe who are neglected or not sufficiently included in what it is that we see as our common assets will begin to recognize that that is exactly where our strength is. And the idea then will be to have a paradigm shift which really enables us to energize our people for the kind of time that we live in, which is right at this particular moment. Now, let me talk about strategy at this point, because, talk is one thing, but there's need to be able to also assure that it is grounded in reality. Let me be clear. We will educate first. Yes, we have to first of all educate. Next is to organize. Yes. And it is only when we have consensus and the capacity to secure lives and properties. Yes, that is the time that we'll be ready. That's the time that we'll move. And so a lot of the preparatory effort that is required, the big rocks being put in the right place before the smaller ones and the sand has to be done. There's no there's no shortcut to getting that done. And there is urgency. Right now, there's fire on the mountain, like we all know, because these crises are real. Our food systems are already captured. The government itself is in question. Resources are already being stolen automatically in unbelievable ways. Insecurity, what about that? Of course, it's rising. And legal frameworks that are already twisted against the people to keep them disadvantaged, oppressed, bamboozled, cowed. These are not abstract. They are connected, and they demand a coordinated remedy. Yes, they demand a coordinated remedy. I want to begin to close now. And so I'm going to be asking you to take 3 steps. 3 steps. The first one is learn. Read our materials. Attend forums. Ask hard questions. So that's the first one that we need to learn. Very often you find people with half knowledge and they have the loudest voice in the audience. That has never helped anyone. So we do need to be able to have people unlearn and relearn, because that's what real learning is today. A whole bunch of our professors are just reading old books that no longer have relevance in the modern society. And so part of what you would definitely want is to be able to have people understand that it's okay to unlearn and relearn. Second thing is that we need to commit. We need to be committed. When you look at us, children of Odua, and one of the reasons why we are as weak as we are, it stems from the fact that a lot of us are not sophisticated enough to be able to understand the role of relational power. Power that is based on a handful of people having a common conviction on something and being willing to assure that that collectiveness enables them to push it. We've never been effective at doing that. This is the reason why there's no Yoruba think tank anywhere across the globe today. And there's no initiative aimed at developing one, despite all of our intellectuals. See, these are the things that keep myself and my co-convener busy and engaged in terms of asking hard questions as to why. So we need to learn is the first thing. Most of us we're so full of whatever, and we just don't really see ourselves, and we got too full. We couldn't learn anything. The second one is to commit, to support ourselves. Support Yoruba Global 1000, not just once, but as a responsibility. You cannot get results if you have to you have to show, even from a spiritual standpoint, there is need to be able to demonstrate that you really have a commitment to what it is that you are wanting God to do for you. And so when you have a society where people are freeloading, and even when they have serious matters, there is no evidence that they are wanting to engage it at a higher level, then you recognize that these type of rudimentary steps are very important. So I did mention under call to action the fact that we need to learn. The second one is to be able to commit, to support whatever the organization, because Yoruba says, "Agbaja ọwọ́ òun la fi ń sọ̀yà," which means that it is the clenched fist that you can put on your chest to affirm unity and strength. And so when you see us now, you can recognize how that is so missing in our polity, and it is obviously very reflected in how we end up coming across. In closing, we are not alone. Across the world, descendants of Odua have kept the flame alive. Now it's time to turn that flame into constructive power. Yes, some of us have spent several decades looking forward to and trying to build real bridges between ourselves, our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and our other brothers and sisters here in the Americas and across the globe. And you know, it's just so sad to see how that has been like cutting teeth for many of us, even though it doesn't have to be. Yorubas as a culture, we have always been a warm, uniting, positive energy nation. And this is one of the reasons why when you look at some of the craziness that has now occupied our space, you recognize that something is terribly wrong. And you recognize how it takes a reset button, it takes some effort, such as what we have here with Yoruba Global, to be able to put things right. Let me close by saying using a Yoruba proverb. And I'm going to I tried to read it in English, but it didn't have the right spark. Àwọn Yorùbá máa ń sọ pé òkùnkùn tó bá ti ojú ẹni ṣú kò kí ń rú ẹni lójú. Let me just, that Yoruba proverb says, you know, just kind of colloquially, the darkness that befalls one while one has light to know what is where does not confuse one in the nighttime. You know, as you can tell, it doesn't have the spark. But the point there is clear. We know the obstacles. We know the actors. And so we act with wisdom, with courage, and a plan towards a jailbreak in Nigeria. Not chaos, but liberation. Planned, responsible, and anchored in Omoluabi ethos and values. I thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm really honored and delighted. And my desire would be to use this not as really just as a primer, where we are introducing ourselves to the world and we are saying that we are very open, very amenable to anything that would enable us build the required synergy, both among our own people and collaborators wherever they may be across the globe, who would be interested in supporting our freedom struggle. Thank you very much. I'll just hand it back over to our host. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the great job you're doing. Oh, let's clap for Daddy. Let's appreciate Daddy for the great speech. Thank you, sir. Now we'll be introducing the Vice President of Yoruba Global 1000. That's Dr. Wumilawa, to give us an inaugural speech on this live session. You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Akinbola, for that unequivocal and pristine message. Well delivered, well enunciated, well enumerated. And I'm glad you came out this this afternoon to address us. Now, my distinguished participants, fellow advocates, friends of truth and justice, permit me to pontificate on what Dr. Akinbola have already said about the elephant. Yes, the elephant is a majestic, powerful, destined to thrive in its natural habitat. Yet in 1960, with the advent of independence, that elephant was sliced apart, fragmented, confused, manipulated, and instead of flourishing, our nations were divided, our people herded into artificial cages of governance. What was supposed to be freedom turned into fragmentation. What should have been sovereignty became subjugation. It is against this backdrop that I rise today, not only as Dr. Wunmi Lawal, not only as a teacher, as a counselor, as an author, and an advocate, but as Vice President and Co-Convener of Yoruba Global 1000, carrying both the burden and the hope of my people, the Yoruba ethnic group. Why Yoruba Global 1000? Why do we gather under this banner of Yoruba Global 1000? We gathered because it is the reset button that history demands. It is the rebirth of the Omoluabi ethos. That ethos is our integrity, our dignity, our courage, and respect for human life. That is what the Omoluabi Yoruba is all about. Our rallying cry is clear and resounding. It is inevitable that one Yoruba Global 1000 must emerge. This is more than a slogan. It is a commitment, a multi-generational vow that we will not rest until our people live in dignity and freedom with their full potential in our ancestral fatherland. What is the origin and our credibility? Yes, I'll let you know. Our foundation is not sudden, nor is it flimsy. It rests upon decades of conviction, scholarship, and community building. From initiatives like the Yoruba World Congress and the Digital Library Project, we have insisted on preserving knowledge, truth, and cultural continuity. As a co-convener of Yoruba Global 1000, I come with a lifetime of training and calling. As an educator with a degree in education, I have taught thousands of young people to how to think critically and embrace their heritage. That is the Yoruba heritage. As a public administrator with a master's degree in public administration, I have studied the systems, not only in America. I've worked in Nigeria's system for over 11 years. And I've been in America for more than 48 years, my people. So I know what I'm talking about when I say my people, the Yoruba people, need to emerge, re-emerge, renew their energy, their potential, their dignity, and their sovereignty. As a counselor with a doctorate degree, I have worked alongside broken souls, and I've been restoring hope where despair seemed final. As a woman who has lived through trials, survived cancers, not one time, not two times, 3 times, with a tumor in my brain in the last 25 years, I have stood unbroken and I will remain steadfast. I know personally that resilience is not an option. It is our very essence. The mixture of skills, experiences, and convictions propel me to insist that Yoruba and all indigenous people deserve to live fruitful, safe, and flourishing lives, free to fulfill their God-given potential. So what is our core goals in Yoruba Global 1000? Our vision is bold, it's imperative, but it is very necessary. A coalition of indigenous nations standing shoulder to shoulder, free from the chains of imposed system. When I say imposed, we did not ask Britain. The Yoruba people have been in existence for over 16 centuries. We did not ask Britain. We did not ask the Berlin Conference of 1895 to segregate us and then to conjoin us with other ethnic groups, ethnic nations. We do not have homogeneity in Nigeria. The Igbos do not speak Yoruba. The Yoruba do not understand Hausa. And the colonial settlers like the Fulanese have nothing in common. No language, no traditions, no cultures, no psychological ethos, and no moral ethos with us as a Yoruba people. Why would we be conjoined with people that drag us down the drain over to the precipice? It's not going to stand as usual. It's not going to be business as usual, my people. We cannot continue as a nation to be dragged down by a colonial settler in our own fatherland. It is not going to be like that. Britain will not come to Germany and rule over Germany. Canada will not come to the United States. They won't dare it. Not with Mr. Donald Trump. To take either Washington, D.C., or Texas, or Chicago, and claim that they're going to rule them. It is going to be impossible. It's going to be a colossal war between Canada and United States. And Australia will not come to London and says that he wants to rule them. It is impossible. So why will we Yoruba people, proud, educated, sophisticated, accommodating, and resilient people allow colonial masters and the proxies to rule over us? It is not going to be business as usual. So we are going to have a future that is free of GMO, as my president has alluded to. We are not going to allow Samoa, Bill Gates, a conglomerate billionaire looking for way to decimate not only Nigerians or Yoruba people, but ready to plummet the African continent into a hole. It is not going to be possible. Mr. Bill Gates is just one person, a rich person. We have several rich people all over the world that are looking for how to benefit the entire hemisphere. But Bill Gates, with proxies and some, I don't want to use that word, some collaborators are compromising. They are complicit in bringing GMO, organ harvesting of our people. That is not altruistic. That is not philanthropy. That is a deadly human dissemination. We will not allow that on our Yoruba sovereignty. The building of global Yoruba brand, let me repeat that. The building of our Yoruba global brand is rooted in truth, in innovation, and our cultural pride. It is a mission that is not just for one nation, one generation, but it's going to be multi-generational. For my generation, the next generation, and unborn generations, our grandchildren, must know that we fought for them. What is the urgency? My people, we cannot postpone this struggle. For the past 111 years, we have been under this dilemma, under this struggle, being encapsulated, being emasculated with genocide, harvesting our organs, taking all our resources. This struggle cannot wait any longer. The urgency is written in our reality. Our land has been forced into the profile of a failed state. Our governance reeks of illegitimacy. Our judiciary, once sacred and proud, has been turned into a market where justice is sold to the highest bidder. Our legislature, the legislature that consists of House of Assembly, the Senate, has become rubber stamp individuals. We cannot have that in our Yoruba of the future. So my call to action today, because it is not normal and it's not going to be acceptable, and this must not continue on our watch. In few months' time, my friend and my brethren, I'll be clocking 70. I haven't spent 48 years in this country. I've learned enough that the United States of America will not take any of the nonsenses that the Yoruba people are taking from colonial masters and their proxies from anybody. Why should we take it? It is not going to be business as usual. Today, my call to action. So what are we going to do? First of all, like Dr. Patrick have said, a lot of us have to unlearn what we have learned. Yes, Yoruba people are Omoluabi, but they're telling us that our Omoluabi is stupidity. It is not. It is our brand. It's our dignity. It's our ethos. We are born to be great and great people. A dove does not walk with the hawk, does not hunt with the hawk. We are doves. Clean, useful, formidable, intelligent, and with integrity. So our call to action is let us relearn. We have to relearn new things of how to govern ourselves, how to love ourselves. An history that has been hidden from us needs to be told in our own narrative, not by Britain, not by America, but by the Yoruba people whose great-grandfathers went through the history. We must be committed. And I know that we have courage. A lot of people will say, oh, why are they not acting? We just don't act. We just don't act. We're not stupid people. We listen intelligently. We obey diligently. And then we act strategically. That is the Yoruba people for you. It might take us 6 months to act, but while that 6 months was going on, we are planning, we are strategizing strategically. So I know we have the courage, we have the truth, and that's the Omoluabi way. We must build structures of freedom. Right now, what we have in that space called Nigeria has no structure. It's a foundation of lies, of manipulations by people that are supposed to lead the nation. They are ruining the nation. So Yoruba people have to be strategically positioned so that our freedom and our self-worth to our children will be awesome and excellent. So our guiding creed is simple, yet very profound. Omoluabi, our origin, our dignity, and our future must be in forefront, must be a core fundamental that we must all follow. Today, to end this, I invite all of you to rise with me, to refuse fragmentation, to reject manipulation, to denounce GMO, genetically modified organism seeds, and to embrace the noble task of building an homeland where our people can live as free human beings, rooted in the ancestral land, unafraid of tomorrow, and confident in their God-given destinies. And I pray that every one of you listening to my voice today will rise to the occasion, will be committed that it is your fatherland we're talking about, not the house of Dr. Lawal, not the house of Mr. Babalola, not the house or home for Dr. Patrick, but the Yoruba global nation that will accommodate all the nations in the committee of the hemisphere. That's my hope. And I promise I will always be steadfast with you all the way I am ready till the last breath is taken out of me. Thank you, people. Thank you, my participants. I'm very grateful that you have the opportunity to come out today to listen to this formidable global press release. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Laura. Thank you, ma. God bless you. Let's invite Ms. Taye George to give out the closing prayer. Thank you, ma.
Ọlọ́run alágbára, a dúpẹ́ fún àkókò yìí, a dúpẹ́ pé ẹ bá wa bẹ̀rẹ̀, a dẹ̀ dúpẹ́ pé ẹ bá wa parí ẹ̀. A dúpẹ́ pé gbogbo ohun tí ẹ fẹ́ kí a sọ Ọlọ́run la sọ, Olúwa ẹ ṣeun. Ǹjẹ́ ní wákàtí ọ̀wọ̀ yìí Ọlọ́run á fún gbogbo ilé yín lọ́wọ́ nítorí tí Olúwa bá kọ́ ilé náà òṣìṣẹ́ ń ṣe lásán. Olúwa pè yín níbẹ̀rẹ̀, ìgbẹ̀yìn náà lélẹ́yìí, Olúwa ẹ wá bá wa kọ́ ilé náà. Gbogbo ohun tí ó wà ní ọkàn wa tí a fẹ́ ṣe, Olúwa ẹ jẹ́ kó ṣeé ṣe. Ogun tí ò ní jẹ́ kó ṣeé ṣe, Olúwa ẹ bá wa mú kúrò. Ẹ bá wa mú kúrò. Ajagun ni Ọlọ́run, Olúwa ẹ wá jagun yìí fún wa. Olúwa ẹ mú wa dé ibi ìjókòó ayọ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ kí a lè ní ẹnu ọpẹ́ lórí gbogbo ohun tí a gbé wá sí iwájú yín. A dúpẹ́ torí pé ẹ ti gbọ́, a dúpẹ́ torí pé ẹ ti ṣe. Ògo yín ọlá forúkọ yín. Àmín.
I want to thank everyone again on behalf of our board with Yoruba Global. We are starting with very, very humble, basic steps, but our motivations are very high, our dreams very big, and we are truly blessed to have our children all across the globe enthusiastic about the possibilities that can emerge from a truly committed organization which sees the worth of our people and sees the ruins that are beginning to occur in our land. The search for resources, for instance, remains a major global issue. And some of you may have heard about Chinese language being included in the Nigerian curriculum only very recently. And the fact that our people still can't write and speak our own language and use our language to solve our problems. So I only mention this as an example to sensitize you to the reason why we really are very inspired and proud that we were able to assure the realization of this day and what it is that we have been able to articulate as representing our collective vision. Of course, as you can see, we are very small and even though big in spirit, and obviously we realize the fact that our children, like quivers, are in a position to be able to go far, far farther than we can. And this is one of the reasons why, or like I would say, like arrows on the quiver, to be able to assure that whatever we do, wherever it is, we take it up to. The idea of creating an environment where our children will be able to more effectively compete across the globe, where they'll continue to do us proud, where our children who are in the diaspora and those in the homeland will come to recognize that the whole world belongs to them if they are willing to affirm the heritage of their people and work accordingly. And so I want to thank you again. I want to appreciate again my brother and my sister here who are joining us for this event, Mr. A. George and our host, Mr. Babalola, are both children of Odua also, to say that we appreciate your taking time off your schedule today to be able to join us. We will distribute this as we have already indicated, and our website is still very, very much what it is. The social media handles also, our intention is going to be to continue to share information using these channels. And so we will definitely appreciate any feedback or updates or commitment to assist us in any way possible. I thank you very much, and I want to thank my co-convener again, Dr. Lawal, for being gracious enough to be able to work with me to assure that we concluded this event today on this very positive and uplifting note. Thank you very much, and you all have a good day.